I taught uppity-tat. I did. And a duck, and a cowboy, and a wabbit. Do you like this? I hope so, because this game is going to be nothing but some sexy puzzle platformer action for the next 60 levels. I don't mean to brag or anything, but I'm pretty good at this game. I don't even see the game anymore. All I see is the patterns. Blonde, brunette, redhead. Frick! This is the Bugs Bunny Crazy Castle, a game with an awkward title and an infamous reputation. In fact, I would wager that most people only know this game from its appearance on the Angry Video Game Nerd. He didn't really care for it. But is this game really bad? Is it the steaming pile of sloppy excrement that we've been led to believe it is? I don't think so. At least, not the first one. The Crazy Castle franchise was made by Kemco. You may not have heard of them before. They're the kind of company that published a lot of licensed titles in the 90s, and Phalanx. But now they mostly do mobile games, almost exclusively RPGs. Kemco seems to use the Crazy Castle brand as a framework for lazily produced licensed titles. Between Bugs Bunny, Mickey Mouse, and Woody Woodpecker, they'd probably slap just about any character in there if they thought it would make a buck. But things like that didn't matter much to me when I was a kid. I only had a handful of games and I played the crap out of them. Plus, this game had Bugs Bunny in it. To my 6 or 7-year-old self, as long as the game was playable, I was good. My brother and I would take turns trading the controller between lives, and we had scraps of paper with all the passcodes written down for each of the levels. This game gives a new password for each level completed, so it always feels like progress is being made. And in a world before most games had a save feature, that was a huge plus. When AVGN did a review of this series back in 2009, I felt like the first game didn't get a fair shake. The later games may have been shovelware, but the first one seems like it actually had some thought put into it. Let's start with the story. What kind of backstory did Kemco concoct for this Crazy Castle cartridge? Our hero Bugs Bunny needs your help on a daring quest to save his main squeeze, Honey Bunny, trademark. Caught in the clutches of those despicable Looney Tunes, trademark. Characters, Daffy Duck, trademark, Yosemite Sam, trademark, Sylvester, trademark, and Wile E. Coyote, trademark. Suffering Succotash, trademark. Those trademark logos don't really lend themselves to easy reading. Sorry. Also, this reads a lot like a plot description from the 1960s Batman TV series. Can you save Gotham from the Penguin, Catwoman, Mr. Freeze, and the Clown Prince of Crime himself? The Joker? But I digress. If this seems like a lame premise for a Bugs Bunny game, that's because it didn't start out as one. Crazy Castle was originally released in Japan as a Who Framed Roger Rabbit game for the Famicom disk drive. The premise was to save Jessica Rabbit from the Weasel Patrol, which makes a lot more sense. But in order to port the game to US consoles, Kemco had to change it to Bugs Bunny due to a licensing issue. All thanks to our friends at LJN. You see, LJN had already released a Roger Rabbit game for the US, and having two games on the same system from two different publishers was, quite frankly, out of the question. Anyway, Kemco secured the rights to Bugs Bunny instead and skinned the game for the US. Can't use your rabbit, huh? Well, who cares? We'll use the other rabbit. No, not that one. No, the gray one. You know what? Never mind. The goal of Crazy Castle is pretty simple. Collect every carrot in the level without getting hit. It's a game about learning enemy behaviors and using that knowledge to maneuver around the stage. Kind of like Pac-Man, but as a platformer. Most of the enemies are at least partially controlled by your actions. Some enemies will chase after you, some enemies will stop when you stop, and some enemies can't use stairwells or tubes. Not paying attention to enemies can really screw you over in this game. And I think that mechanic is brilliant. And then there's Daffy. He only moves when you move, and you'll usually run into him when it's least convenient. Oh no, you know what? Yeah, I wanted to die. Thanks. One thing that makes this game unique, especially on the NES, is that the enemies persist off-screen. Usually on these older consoles, enemies would despawn when out of view in order to conserve system resources. But this game needs the enemies to keep moving for the puzzle element of the game to function properly. There were times when I had to take a blind leap of faith without knowing if I was going to land on one of them. Or, I guess, a fall of faith. You can't jump in this game. Why? I would assume because that would mean designing levels around a jump mechanic, and that would be a very different game. It is kind of funny that you're a rabbit who can't hop. I never really thought about that when I was little. Weird. Speaking of movement, that's where this game's challenge comes from. It's not that the game controls poorly, but this is the kind of game where you have to move a whole tile at a time. There's no inching forward. I took a little extra care when I had to not accidentally walk off an edge because sometimes, when you do, freaking fucking taffy. Every time. Always. My only real complaint about controlling this game is the way staircases work. Let me explain. Once you're on the stairs, it can be difficult to turn around. You need to either press up or down, but not left or right, because left and right just continue moving bugs in the direction he was already going. You need to be very deliberate about your direction choice. And I know that sounds simple enough, but in the heat of the moment, that can be a difficult thing to remember. Why not just use left and right? Although carrot collecting is the only way to complete a level, there are other objects you can interact with. There are boxing gloves that work like a projectile, a weight, a safe, a crate, and a bucket. All of which react differently when you push them, but all of them useful when you want to thin out the herd of enemies. And then there's the no carrot. This is introduced in level 30, halfway through the game. I mean, you'd probably understand just by looking at it that you aren't meant to touch it, right? Well, yes and no. If you touch one, it immediately kills you, but then it takes you to a bonus stage with a much higher difficulty. If you beat the bonus stage, you gain 3 lives and continue on with the game. If you die, and you will most likely die, Bugs is sent back 3 levels. You know what? I'd rather just avoid touching it and move forward. As you may know, the NES had very strict color palette limitations that would force developers to get creative with their design choices. I might make a short video about that in the future. Crazy Castle is one of the games that really took advantage of the limitations and found a style that works well. In this game, there are 3 kinds of environments, all of which have their own tile sets, music, and level style. You've got brick building, concrete wood towers, and future tube world. Tube world is unique because of its tubes. I'm going in, and I got no idea where I'm going to end up, but I'm just going with it. Also, the character sprites are well done considering the limitations of the NES. This feels like a game that may have had some thoughtful design decisions behind it. I do have one complaint about the character sprites. It's the way Bugs Bunny looks when he dies. This seems silly now, but I played this on a tube TV when I was a kid. One of the things those old TVs did was blur pixels together, taking these simple sprites and making them appear more complex and letting my child brain imagine the extra details. Or in the case of Bugs Bunny dying, instead of looking like his hand is sticking out perpendicular to his torso, he just looks like a gaunt corpse with an exposed ribcage. I always thought that was creepy. Was that just me? Am I the only one who saw that? Oh. Well, either way, silhouette is important, and a stronger sprite would have had Bugs Bunny's arm further up or down in order to convey the intended action. Potentially, not a difficult fix. Speaking of difficulty, this game isn't really hard. I mean, it's hard, but not really hard. I sat down to record some gameplay footage and ended up accidentally playing to the end in just 2 hours. I don't know if this is because I played Crazy Castle so much as a kid or what, but it could be that this game is just not as difficult as I remember. Or maybe I was bad at games when I was little. That's possible too. Whatever, man. Back off. For me, the hardest level of the bunch was 55, just 5 levels away from the end of the game. 55 is a vertically scrolling level with a very specific sequence of events that you have to accomplish in order to complete it. It all hinges on your ability to get to the top of the level before all the Sylvesters do. I won't tell you any more, just in case you want to play this yourself, because it has a good challenge to it. Kemco made a whole series of these crazy castle games, but I never spent much time with any of the others. They changed the game to be about finding keys hidden in rooms, and it just breaks up the flow of play. It breaks what made the first game fun. I'm not saying that this is the greatest game ever made, but I do think that this first Crazy Castle game gets more hate than it deserves. Maybe now you'll give it a shot if you hadn't before. I'm going to give this game a rating of fair and balanced. It's not too hard and not too easy. And like I said before, it doesn't take too long to beat. This is a game that does not overstay its welcome. If you'd like me to cover the rest of the Crazy Castle series in the future, or talk about any games for that matter, why not leave a comment or send me a message on Twitter at GGG Games Show. Also, if you like this video and want to see me make more, then why not like and subscribe? The next episode of Games is part 2 of Nintendo before Nintendo made the Nintendo. Let's find out what happened after Hiroshi Yamauchi took over his family's business together. Thanks for watching.